Robyn seems to have dropped out though. Where is she?
Yep.
Well, she might need to reconnect to the session. She might have Do you have a number you can text her on, Juan?
She's just joining now.
Oh, okay, great, good. She must have been out, yeah. I hope everybody watched right till the end to see that wonderful video. There you are back again, Robyn, great. Well, I think we're a small crowd, but I think we're probably a very enthusiastic crowd. So I'm wondering whether we'd like to hear a little bit from Juan and Robyn, or would we rather take some questions first, or comments or reactions? Maybe I'm just wondering whether it might be just good to hear some reactions first from the audience who've never seen this film before, and invite that first, and then we can hear a bit more reflection from the people that were involved in it. So can I invite others? Maybe Anne, would you like to start off? I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I know you'd be very interested in what the topic of the film was.
Yeah, thank you so much. What a gift, Robyn. And Juan, incredible filmmaking. I just feel so privileged to have watched that and to have shared. I felt I'm sitting outside. I'm on Gundungurra country, which is Goulburn between Sydney and Canberra, and I'm sitting outside with the rain, looking out at my own food garden. So I felt the world that you were sharing, your part of the world, melding with my own experience of the rain and watching the birds and insects and so on. So it was just breathtaking and very spiritual in a way, to kind of feel the sense of the journey. I've connected with permaculture for a long time, but the beauty that comes through in the film is that sense of human and non-human melding, you know. So the way you describe the taro, loving the weather, if you walked in there, you'd be lost, I think you said, Robyn. It was so beautiful. The magic happening, the people have the answers, they just don't have the courage. Totally agree about seed sovereignty, and I think that might have been Vandana Shiva that you had your arm around. Is that correct?
That's
and
right.
I use her work and the seed, the 9 seeds, and the work that she does in India in a lot of my development and community teaching at University of Canberra. So there were just so many synergies, and I just wanted to say a huge thanks. It's a wonderful film.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Anne. Would anyone else like to just make a comment on the film, or how they responded to it? Maybe Tom. And I'm sorry, I don't know who's. I've been introduced, but I can't remember.
Sorry, this is Sophie.
Yeah, I'm Sophie. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Tom, originally from Ireland, but currently in the Netherlands, working in Czech Republic, a bit all over the place. But yeah, it's a bit of a messy situation. But I think that links with the film actually, because I loved it. It was beautifully shot, wonderful history as well in there, threaded through, which was really lovely. And yeah, a stunning sort of picture, it's sort of insight into Australia, you know, and the blessing of living in this amazing climate and rich sort of biodiverse landscape. And yeah, it was wonderful. And it was really joyful, but it also brought up mixed feelings for me as well, as like sort of living in this hypermobile, landless, rootless, modern academic existence, to see this like long, many decades story of rootedness. And yeah, there was a lot of joy there from the garden, and joy from the books. And as we've been moving, I think, yeah, it really brought up a lot of kind of emotions around that, the importance of those kind of, that attachment to place. And so I have lots of questions about the film, but yeah, just to say that it was great for me. It was really powerful, and Yeah, it'd be great to discuss some of those things.
I also have a couple of questions too, but it also made me think. Here in Netherlands, there's a housing crisis, and there's lots of people, especially students like me. I'm foreign. I'm from Guatemala, and it's so hard to find just accommodation or a place where to live. And Dutch people, Dutch students or the young generations, they are really worried about the housing crisis, and they say like, I don't know where to go. I don't have a place for my own. They are, you can find houses shared by 15, 20 people, 20 students, and they are all like very worried about the housing crisis. So it's, the film is also about, how necessary it is to have these spaces, these safe spaces and community spaces that are in jeopardized now by just capitalism. It's really hard.
Mhm. Great, thanks. Ed, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to say, first of all, Juan and the team involved in bringing the film together, like, huge congratulations, because it's a beautiful film. And having been there for 2 weeks on site while you were filming at Djanbung Gardens, I would say the conditions that you filmed in would have been challenging, I'm sure. There was a segment of rain that you showed, but I think it's fair to say it rained every day and relentlessly for most of the time. I love you captured the storm with the bats flying over at the point the storm was in the distance and the bats flew over. And I think all of us stood, and we were all standing behind you with the camera watching in awe as that storm came through. And I think that's probably something that encapsulates for me, you know, how beautiful it was at Djanbung Gardens. Just you know, there's so many different changes in season and climate, and yeah, such an inspiring place. And I think to have done a PDC, I would say that it gives you, you know, such an appreciation for the answers. Really, I think permaculture is the answer to so many of our questions, and I would encourage anyone on here who's not looked into a PDC to look into it, because you will find answers. And yeah, congratulations again on the film. It brings it all together so well. I'm sure we'd love to hear from Robyn as well on, you know, as we get to it. But yeah, Robyn, thanks very much for all the inspiring teaching you've given.
Thanks. I don't know, Kerry, whether you've had a chance, would you like to make a comment, or Katherine? I'm not sure how much you've been able to be present given all the organising you're doing as well, but if you'd like to, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched the whole thing. It was very easy to be present. Yeah, thanks for making that film. It was really enjoyable, really peaceful. That's one thing I like about gardening, and what is beyond, obviously, the ecological benefits of permaculture, but it seems also to be a very kind of really positive impact on well-being for humans and non-humans as well. But so many things really fascinated me. I love how you grow also plants for crafts and fiber. Was really interesting. I don't think I've really come across too many people, maybe any people, that really do that. So I really like that. Love the music at the end, actually. So thanks for having that in. And one thing that really actually piqued my interest a lot was the comment about the bee. And I didn't know that at all, that one bee that you put in there, Robyn, that one bee's life's work is a teaspoon of honey. Now, I'm not a huge honey eater, but I'll definitely never ever look at a teaspoon of honey the same way ever again. And so I think that's really fascinating. And I think it shows the power of getting to know and understanding or learning about insects, animals and plants, etc. And the more that you kind of know about them, the more you can appreciate and respect them as well, which I guess is another really powerful aspect of permaculture. Probably offers a more holistic take on insects, plants, birds, rivers, water, whatever, than some other kinds of. I studied agricultural science at university, interestingly, and it's very different from permaculture, as you can imagine. We did cropping, broadacre cropping, and, you know, how much, you know, matter, dry matter in a pasture do you have to, you know, feed lactating cows, etc., which is interesting. Everyone always thought I was the strange kind of radical person that wasn't actually from a farming background. But anyway, yeah, thanks very much for sharing and for producing that great film.
Thank you.
Great. And maybe Katherine and Marco, you must have watched it both together.
Actually,
Yes.
I did the school run, but Marco watched it, so I'm handing over to him.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's Marco here on Djanbung country. Apologies for the lighting. I think we both look like we're on witness protection with the light behind. But I just I wanted to say how much I enjoyed the film, Robyn. It was just fantastic. One of the things that really came across to me strongly was the different ways of accumulating knowledge, and the way that came through even in the detail of the library and the books, and the sort of the way in which that accumulation of knowledge gives you independence. And I think that's the thing that really kind of came to me very strongly through the film, was this need for independence, because us as educators and researchers, you know, I would love to be able to set up an institute sort of, you know, almost on one's own terms, and the different kinds of supports that you need for that, in a way, not on your own terms, but also on nature's terms, and with very close links to community. So that was sort of just one of many insights I gained. Another was the links between the sort of pattern language of Christopher Alexander's work and the sort of patterning that you talk about in permaculture. So thanks very much.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll make a few comments, and then we'll ask the three of you to make a comment as well. But I just, we've been really privileged in this Ljubljana conference so far to hear from a few people who've had a really long-standing relationship with a place or a community. And we started off with Kevin St. Martin, who's worked for more than 20 years with Fisher people in the northeastern part of New England, and the wealth of the work he's been able to do there because of that longevity. And then yesterday we heard from Bhavya Chitranshi, who's been working for more than 7 or 8 years with a group of single women farmers who are doing ecological farming in India. And these are women who usually are quite denigrated in society because they're single, but she's got such a deep now connection to that community that the work that she's doing is so rich. And this is just another example to me of how important it is to hear from scholars and practitioners who've got this deep connection to one place that they can learn so much from and teach so much to the rest of the world for. Later on today, Bhavya and another student of mine and I are giving a seminar at the Institute on food, remembering the promises of food security. And I'm starting with the 1950s, where, you know, the whole kind of great acceleration began, which I saw you kind of talking in the course. And, you know, all the promises of pesticides and so on. And I've just recently been reading again Rachel Carson's book in preparation for teaching a course on feminist ecologies and economies. And just to see that story of the aphids being controlled by the by the ladybugs was just a wonderful kind of way of slowing down and watching nature do what it does, which was so antithetical to the whole great acceleration, which, you know, is so impatient. Human beings have been so impatient with nature, and look at we've got to. So I feel like what you've done in this film and representing it to others is going to be very important for teaching and helping people unlearn so much the sort of agriculture that Kerry was trained in. And there's so many points of connection with community economies thinking. I think the way of designing with communities and working with what's available, starting with what you've got, which has always been a kind of key ethic and principle of our work, and also that importance of ethics, the kind of ethical relationships that you want to establish with others, with earth others, and so on. That seems to be, you know, really a great point of connection. And then the whole issue around different kinds of land tenure, which is so important to things like what Sophie's mentioned about housing and so on. You know, this is a really crucial issue, the way in which we need to have different ways of relating to land through legal structures. So this film is, you know, introducing people to a whole range of strategies in so many different areas that are going to be helpful for going forward. So I just want to thank you, Robyn, for what you've done, and Juan and Rowena for capturing it so incredibly. I had no idea that. I just realized, Ed, that it was raining all the time he was filming it. Now I've got an insight into what you were able to do. So thank you so much. It was just wonderful to see it again. And I'd seen it in the earlier stage where we gave comments about how to maybe restructure the story somewhat. And I think it works beautifully now. And just to see you singing that song at the end, Robyn, is just an incredible, wonderful piece of footage. I'm so glad it got in there. So, Robyn, would you like to make some comments?
Well, yeah, I really want to thank Juan and Elisa and Rowena. And you've done a beautiful job with this. And it's something that I've been, you know, sort of hoping to have created for many years. And it's a dream come through. And I think you've really, you know, captured a lot of the essence of this place and what I do, and you've just, some of the cinematography is just really beautiful, and it really, you know, it just shows that deep connection with nature. You know, sort of there's enough intimacy there in terms of a lot of those close nature shots, and yeah, I suppose I'm really close to it, and it's hard for me to sort of step back, but I really appreciate it. I've showed it to a couple of friends and they've really loved it. The only complaint I've had is that it's too short. They want to hear more. So yeah, maybe we can do a little sort of thumbnail sequels of some of the more in-depth interviews or something down the track, make a little more of the footage available. But I think it's beautiful cameo in half an hour, which is really engaging. And I just want to thank you so much for taking this on and for creating something so wonderful. And thanks everybody for your feedback and noting the things that resonated with you in the film, because yeah, these are all I suppose issues that are very dear to my heart, and I'm really happy that the film has brought them through in such a lovely way. I'm happy to answer any questions, and of course, you know, your comments yeah, brought up a lot for me as well. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Robyn. I think it's going to be very useful for teaching if it's available as it is. I'm sure a lot of us are going to be able to use it. So, Juan, would you like to make some comments on the journey of making the film, or how you feel about it now?
Yep, sure, thank you. I'm joining from Wangal and Gadigal country in Sydney, next to the Cooks River. And I have in my background Djanbung, just to feel connected back to Djanbung Gardens. That's the mural in Djanbung Gardens. I'd like to thank Robyn. First of all, I think she's a wise woman and an elder in the true sense of the word. Having done the PDC was a truly transformative experience for me. I think there's many ways to approach permaculture, and there's many PDCs around the world. And I feel so privileged that I ended up in Djanbung learning from Robyn. I absolutely enjoyed every single second of that course. It's like a 2-year diploma in 2 weeks. You cannot get distracted because you miss, you know, the 3.5 billion history of this planet and how to be resilient and regenerate this planet. So I thank you, Robyn, for opening your doors to me and making a film. And as I was doing the PDC, I'm sure you can appreciate the difficulty of making a film and doing a PDC with Robyn Francis in 2 weeks, and the weather, and sleeping on a tent that got wet, and I was drier outside than inside the tent. But I kept seeing so many connections between what Robyn was sharing and teaching and the work of Katherine Gibson and many of you at CERN. So I kept thinking all the time, how can I connect Robyn and Katherine and CERN? And it proves that films, one of the beauties and power of films is that they connect people. And that's one of the things I love about making films, is how they connect people in very interesting and beautiful ways. So I'm really pleased that this film at least is connecting Robyn and Katherine and CERN, because I think there's a lot of common ground in what you all do. I think was also difficult to make a film that captures 30 years of a project, a life story of one person and her project, 30 years into 30 minutes. It's a huge challenge. I think there's a process of building trust. Robyn and I had met once before, and we were both undergoing, it's been a difficult year for all of us in many ways. So it took time to build that trust. So I also thank you, Robyn, for trusting me in making a film about you. And I think at the end, we both, together with Elisa and Ed and everyone, I think we approach this film with reverence and humility and wonder. And I think that's what comes through in the film. And the other challenge is obviously something that I'm very dear about, and you all share, which is how to capture the non-human in film, which is so difficult, how to give a voice to nature and not a human voice, how not to anthropomorphize nature and try to let nature speak for itself in a representational format such as film, which is always so difficult. So I'm glad to hear the comments that, the bees are there, the taro, it is sort of speaking the storms, the rain, the weather, the elements. I think it's a very humid film, and I wanted to make it a humid film. I wish I could have done it a 1 hour film. I love long, slow films. I love slow filmmaking, but I thought this one would be better for connecting and for teaching if it was a half an hour film. And of course, Robyn, you're most welcome to use the footage. I also think that I wanted to make the film in ways that respected the permaculture principles that Robyn works with and the community economies principles that you all work with, and make a film that could be maybe not anti-capitalist, but it could be produced outside of the industrial modes of commercial filmmaking. And I think that is possible, at least for me, that I have a privileged existence, that I don't have to earn a living through film, and I approach film as an amateur for the love of it. But I truly think that we could go back to the 60s and the 20s, where film production could exist outside of the capital modes of production. So I wanted to prove with this film that another way of making films is possible as well. But that is not possible without Rowena Crowe. Rowena Crowe is the most outstanding editor and artist. We have a telepathic relationship. And she, you can have the most outstanding footage, with the best cinematographer, but it is in the editing where the story comes together. That's the construction. Editing film is a construction, it's a craft. It's like building a building. You can have the best, things to build the building, but it is the editing. So Rowena is just a master in bringing the story to life. And she was busy, and the project got stalled because I tried to start editing myself, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to do it, and had to wait for Rowena to, get rid of other people and give me her attention. And once she did, the first cut was already like, shit, like she's got it. It's like, she doesn't know Robyn. She hasn't been to Djanbung, and she just got it. The first draft, it's very different to the final film. So it's always an absolute honor and a pleasure to work with you, Rowena. So thank you. That's it for me.
Great. Well, Rowena, we've got to hear from you now. No. Any comments about working on it or whatever?
Thanks so much, Juan. That's so beautiful to hear that from you. Thank you. Gorgeous. And I really enjoyed hearing everyone's comments. It's really quite moving actually, because yes, I'm on Dharwal country, so in Wollongong, and here I am on Zoom talking to you all. And Juan and I have been separated, and of course the gardens are up in Nimbin. So yeah, it's this way of connecting through digital media I appreciate, but there's something that, yeah, I really miss about not being, of course, in the same space with people. So yeah, the cutting of the film was really it was a spread out process, and that's always a good thing, I think, because you have time to reflect and things. And one of the things I want to say to Robert is just a personal story, like I have a tiny garden that I've been nurturing out my window, and it is tiny because I've been in a shared apartment, so it's a shared space. So I've just like collected myself a small, rectangle of soil. And being in lockdown, I've learnt more about the place I'm living on. So this process had started, and then, Juan put this film in front of me. I was like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want to be cutting right now. So you've had some influence on me in terms of, I was growing some pumpkin, and I think I would throw those seeds away before, so now I've kept them. They've dried and they're ready for the next year. And right now I've got some rocket going to seed, and that's something I've never done before. I'm like, wow, look at those pods and you can eat them. And it's just like, the opportunity for growth in learning about seed sovereignty and growing just where the sun goes in your own bloody backyard is just so liberating, and such a strange experience living in this capitalist world that we're not connected to that. So thank you for your gifts and your sharing your knowledge. Yeah, it had a deep impact on me. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Rowena. So really, we could just open up for some questions. If anyone had questions of Robyn or of Juan. And I know Anne's got a comment in the chat as well. Maybe you want to just quickly talk to that, Anne, and then we could open that topic up, and unless anyone's got a sort of more point of information kind of question they'd like to raise early on. No, okay, yeah, go for it, Anne.
Well, I think the comment in the chat space is one, a curiosity about that idea of self-reliance. And, it got me thinking a little bit about sort of patterns and systems thinking, about the sort of taking me back actually to trying to think about more than human sort of systems and organisms as a self, like the way ants say function as this kind of self that's bigger than just one ant, because they're all working to support the colony and the queen, and there's this kind of sense of super self, if you like, or community self. So I guess I just wondered about this idea of self-reliance. I think even thinking about Marco's comments about the passion for sort of being able to create institutions and like you have, Robyn, a sense of community that comes out of this sense of self, but that's bigger than just the individual. And so you distinguish between self-sufficiency and self-reliance, where self-sufficiency might be that very individualized sense of I'm kind of looking after myself and, growing all my own food. But self-reliance, you aligned with community. So I guess I just wanted to sort of think about what that notion of self-reliance was. That was a community notion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Robyn, you want to comment?
Oh, that's that you've really encapsulated it. And it was something that, you know, Bill Mollison, he almost felt like self-reliance was like a slur, you know, because I suppose the epitome of self-reliance was that book on self-reliance. And, you know, if you're doing everything yourself, you know, including growing the cotton to spin the thread to make your own clothes and milking the cow to make your own butter and cheese, you'd need, you know, sort of 57 hours in a day and 17 days in a week and 150 days, weeks in a year. And nobody can do it all. And so that concept of self-reliance is more relative. It's more inclusive. And also just the whole thing, I think somebody mentioned, oh yes, in your comment also about sustainability being that midpoint between regenerative and degenerative systems. I think Toby Hemingway, a wonderful permaculture teacher and author from the US who passed away some years ago, sadly. But in one of his talks, I think he just nailed it beautifully. He said, you know, if I asked you how your marriage or your relationship was going and you said, oh, it's sustainable. That doesn't sound terribly great, does it? It's just, you know, just chugging along. And I often use the example of this property, you know, and when I got it, it was just an empty cow pasture, seriously compacted. And I mean, I could have sustained that as a cow pasture in perpetuity and raised 1.5 cows a year on it. And, oh, great, you know, I'm sustainable. I'm sustaining this beautiful pasture. But, you know, look at what we've been able to do with regenerative thinking and the biodiversity that we have here now and the wildlife that lives here, and the abundance that we are creating for ourselves, for the wildlife. And then there's sort of, you know, the, I suppose, the non-physical aspects of that abundance that is that interaction with the community.
Yeah, wonderful. Any other questions? I know Tom and Sophie, you had said you had a few questions that came up with the film. Want to voice any of those?
You want to start? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I have a question for Robyn, but I would also like to hear your opinion. In Latin America, I was just thinking that it's interesting how the concept of permaculture can change depending the culture or the country. And in Guatemala, in my country, for example, you can also find like critical positions with the word permaculture, because around like the 60% of the population is indigenous, and they say like, we don't know the word permaculture because that has been like our lifestyle since many like years ago. And sometimes it's a little bit problematic when you find like these NGOs or organizations like, we want to teach indigenous peoples about permaculture. And they said like, oh, but we don't want to learn anything. We want our land back because they are facing problems with extractivism, mono agriculture, like with African palm oil industries. So they have, you can also find these positions of, well, we don't want to learn this kind of new thing called permaculture. We just want our old traditions back and keep with our lifestyle. And also Arturo Escobar says he's an anthropologist from Colombia, and he says that in Latin America you can find these strong ontological battles to defend their own right to live their ontological visions. So my question would be, what was your experience in Latin America? Because you were in Cuba, so it's very interesting to hear about your experience, for example.
Yeah,
great, thank you.
thanks for that question. And look, you know, this is really important. I've worked also in Indonesia and Taiwan, China, Malaysia, India, with remote Aboriginal communities here in Australia, in New Zealand, with sort of both white New Zealanders, Pakeha, and Maori. In my work in Taiwan also has been a lot with Indigenous Taiwanese. And, you know, one of the things that I find, like, so many cultures have lost so much through colonialism and colonial arrogance and Western arrogance, you know, and superiority and privilege, and the way it's imposed Western thinking, Western agriculture, Western economic thinking and stuff to actually destroy communities, not only so like the dispossession of land, which has happened in the past and still ongoing, but on so many levels. And for example, in Bali, I taught a number of courses there that were translated into Indonesian. And it was lovely at the end of one of those courses, you know, one of the participants came up to me. He was probably in his late 20s. And he said, thank you, Ibu Robyn. This course has helped me appreciate my culture, the Balinese culture and traditions. He says, I was feeling embarrassed that they were primitive. And now I can see that they actually have got, you know, a strong ecological basis. And now I actually have the understanding and I've got the terminology to explain and defend my culture and my traditions to those experts. And he says, now I love my village. I want to go back to my village now, back to my family farm and integrate, you know, those traditions with permaculture thinking to take us ahead into the future, because, you know, society's changed, the situation's changed, the economy's changed. We can't just go back to where we were before. But you've given me the tools to take the best of our past forward. And that's what I've met everywhere, where particularly I have worked with traditional rural people and especially Indigenous peoples. Permaculture is not a set of techniques that you impose. It's, I suppose it's really more a set of questions that are answered through, I suppose, a minimum grounding in earth science and understanding how nature systems actually work and function and those interrelationships. And so you'll find that permaculture will be different everywhere. You know, in Taiwan, you've got your Han permaculture. You've also got your indigenous Taiwanese permaculture, you know. You've got your Indian permaculture, and that will have, that will look a little bit different depending where you are in India, according to the climate, the culture, whether it's urban, whether it's in remote rural villages. You know, you've got your Cuban permaculture, and I mean, permaculture was really important in Cuba. I was editing the International Permaculture Journal in the early 90s and received a letter from an architect in Havana who had been given some copies of the Permaculture magazine and book and stuff. And he said, look, Robyn, you know, people are starving. We don't have a good history of agriculture apart from, you know, growing tobacco and sugar and coffee to send to Russia, and that's all dried up. We need permaculture. And so I published that letter, and some people from Melbourne, funded by, I think the ACF, went over to Cuba and conducted the first permaculture course there in the early 90s. And it's been so valuable there. And there's some, I mean, the urban permaculture systems in Cuba are incredibly inspiring, as well as some of the well-established permaculture farms. But wherever permaculture goes, it's not a set of rules, it's not a set of techniques. It's an approach where you take the best from what exists and you draw heavily and build on that traditional knowledge. So I hope that sort of helped to answer your question there. It's a real two-way thing.
There's a lot of connections there, I think, with the work we've done to try and value the language people have around economic relationships of mutual aid and so on. So the project in Monsoon Asia is working with people to actually revalue the terms that are actually the ones that probably support those kinds of agriculture. So the kind of economic diversity that also was outlawed or squashed by modernism is something that our work has been trying to kind of rekindle interest in. So I think that's another one of those places where, you know, diverse ecologies and diverse economies kind of really comes together. But I'm looking at time, and unfortunately it's, I think we'd said we'd go till 9:30, and that's probably the time we need to wrap up. So I just want to thank you all for coming along to this world premiere of the film, Nature Calls the Shots, and hopefully we'll have many other chances to celebrate this film, and at least we'll certainly do it again in this conference for hopefully different time zones. And thank you so much, Robyn, for joining us, and Rowena, it's wonderful to have you here together, and hopefully in future we might be able to organise some other kind of event that really celebrates your work and maybe, and you know, brings that conversation that Juan has brought us together in. You're right, though, film is such a wonderful medium for collaboration, and it's a very joyful form of collaboration, because as I found on the Bamboo Bridge, everybody adds their own creativity, and the whole thing becomes more than the sum of the parts. And just experiencing that is just a wonderful thing to do. So hopefully we'll see more of it in our community economies work, and we'd love to link to this film on our website so that people can watch it and use it in teaching and so on. So thank you, everybody, and have a good day, have a good night, and see you at some of the other sessions. And wonderful to have you, Marco, join us from the witness protection.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
Thank
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. That was excellent.
Thank
Love
you.
to come and visit you, Robyn, whenever we can travel north.
Yes, do. Please do.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. And
Nice to see you, Robyn.
Yeah.
Okay,
See you
nice
soon.
to see you. And thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'll be leaving in a sec. I'm just making note of these beautiful comments here. Okay, bye.
No worries. Have you copied the comments? Do you want me to send the comments to you?